Judicial Watch isn't just playing around here and coming out and yelling about stuff. We're in court fighting hard for the rule of law, in this case on election integrity, and we're facing, pretty big opponents. Those of you who have been following Judicial Watch for a long time, or even recently, know that we're second to none in trying to preserve and protect free and fair and lawful elections here in the United States. We've been successful in lawsuits and settlements related to lawsuits that have cleaned up to date in just over the last year, over 2 million names in California, New York City, North Carolina, Colorado. And we stopped Democratic rigging of elections in Maryland with outrageous, that was designed to put forward an outrageous partisan gerrymander. And there's another lawsuit we have ongoing, in addition to our efforts to clean up the rolls in Illinois, that is a challenge on behalf of a congressman there, Congressman Bost, and other voters, Illinois' practice or law of counting ballots that arrive after Election Day for up to 2 weeks, including ballots that are not postmarked. And so that challenge is proceeding. And interestingly, the Democratic Party of Illinois tried to intervene in the case. Now, sometimes in these types of litigations, you have outside parties who have an interest in litigation try to intervene. You sometimes hear people file amicus briefs, which essentially are, well, not essentially, which are defined as friend of court briefs that help the court think about this, about the issues before it. But if you intervene, you become a defendant, practically speaking, or a plaintiff in certain circumstances. And in this case, the Democratic Party wants to intervene to defend and become a defendant in this Illinois lawsuit. Now, we objected to that happening, and the court at the lower level agreed with us. In the ruling and opinion on the Democratic Party of Illinois' motion to intervene, the judge in the case held that his participation would delay this time-sensitive case. The Democratic Party of Illinois cannot meet its burden to show that its interests will be adequately represented by the parties to the case. As a result, the party is not entitled to intervene as of right. Separately, because allowing the party to intervene would threaten to delay this time-sensitive case further, the court in its discretion denies the motion seeking permission to intervene. Now, the whole fight is about what Election Day is. Federal law defines Election Day as the first Tuesday after the first Monday in the November of every even-numbered year. The initial complaint that we filed states that despite Congress's clear statement regarding a single national election day, Illinois has expanded Election Day by extending by 14 days the date for receipt and counting of vote-by-mail ballots. Judicial Watch points out that the current Illinois election law allows vote-by-mail ballots received up to 14 days after the polls close on Election Day to be counted as if they were cast and received on or before Election Day. Illinois law also provides that even vote-by-mail ballots without postmarks shall be counted if received up to 14 days after Election Day, if the ballots are dated on or before Election Day. The board, so we got information that in 2020, the number of ballots received after Election Day could materially affect the unofficial election results. Illinois' own data indicates that Illinois received 266,417 vote-by-mail ballots statewide during the period from November 3rd through November 17th. Most of the vote-by-mail ballots were received after Election Day, which would mean that as many as 4.4% of votes cast in 2020 were received after Election Day. By counting untimely and illegal ballots received after Election Day and diluting plaintiffs' timely cast and received ballots, plaintiffs, the folks we represent, defendants acting under color of Illinois law have deprived and are depriving plaintiffs of rights protected under the First Amendment and 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in violation of law. So this is a pretty big lawsuit, don't you agree? And the court said, Illinois Democrats, you can't participate. It's too important. The Illinois government is more than capable of defending this lawsuit. If you want to share your opinions on the issues before us here as we can move forward, you can, but you're not participating because it's going to muck up the lawsuit. Now, typically, when that happens, losing interveners disappear. They either file amicus briefs, as suggested by the court, but in this case, the Illinois Democratic Party appealed this decision. And so we had an argument last week before the federal appellate court about the Illinois Democratic Party's effort to intervene to ensure that ballots, and in my view, or as our lawsuit alleges, are improperly counted after Election Day, and for 14 days after Election Day. And so I think it's quite telling that that party has such an interest in ensuring this process that is so at odds with law and so at odds with fair and free elections. But there you have it. Now, I don't know how it's going to go. I don't, if they win, they win, and they're in the case. We'll just have to fight more folks in the case. But I tell you, Judicial Watch isn't just playing around here and coming out and yelling about stuff. We're in court fighting hard for the rule of law, in this case, on election integrity, and we're facing, pretty big opponents. I mean, the Illinois Democratic Party is represented by, big-time lawyers, as you might imagine. I think it's the law firm of the infamous Mark Elias. I think his partner was arguing. So, these are pretty high stakes. And your Judicial Watch is in court trying to, in the case of Illinois, protect and preserve the right to vote there and vindicate the right to vote that's diluted by votes that are improperly counted. But it would send a signal nationwide if we were to win that this post-election day counting of ballots that arrive after Election Day are anathema to the rule of law and free and fair elections. And frankly, they're anathema to the rule of law is a long way of saying it's illegal. So, this is a big issue in 2020. It's going to remain. It was just a big issue last year, 2022, where you had some jurisdictions out west. They couldn't figure out who was winning or losing for days and weeks afterwards. Now, some of that isn't because they were counting ballots that arrived after Election Day, but, I tell you, you count ballots that arrive after Election Day, I mean, you're turning Election Day into a joke. And you're just providing opportunities to mess with the results. That's the danger of it. Does it mean that results were messed with? Not necessarily, but in the least we need to have a system that people can have confidence in. And in this case, you can only have confidence in the system if they comply with the law. And we allege that they don't comply with the law, and as a result, our clients' civil rights are being violated. So election integrity, by the way, is the civil rights issue of our time. So that's big news there, and there's been some other good news on the election law fight. Just so you know, the 11th Circuit, which oversees Florida, which the jurisdiction covers Florida, upheld Florida's election laws that were quite modest in trying to regulate drop boxes a bit more strictly and things like that. And you remember the left went crazy when they changed those rules. And the 11th Circuit said there's no problem with what Florida did. This is, again, the left hates election integrity in my view, for obvious reasons, that they want to be able to steal elections when necessary. So the North Carolina Supreme Court, which got more conservative after an election last year, just restored and threw out prior partisan and ideological rulings against voter ID. I mean, the North Carolina people had approved voter ID, a pretty moderate voter ID law that I would actually strengthen if I were them. And the court said, this is, we can't have courts acting as super legislatures. This voter ID is perfectly normal and reasonable. You're just pretending it's racist when it's not. You know what the left does. And so now we have a voter ID law in North Carolina that had been put on hold for years by activist liberal courts that now is going to be the law of the land in North Carolina. So some good news. Elections are getting slowly but surely more cleaner. There's a lot more to go, a lot further to go. But Judicial Watch is cleaning up the rolls. Some states are strengthening election integrity measures. Efforts to derail those measures in court are largely failing. And Judicial Watch is more directly challenging current regulations that undermine election integrity that are unlawful, as we're doing in Illinois. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.